Hey there, and welcome to another Edit My Photo Winners Edit. As the winner of this challenge, Rebecca submitted this image taken in a tulip field. There's some fantastic leading lines from the tulips and the pathway that really draw you into the dog. I'm going to keep this edit pretty simple to play on those leading lines and symmetry, bring up the exposure of the dog and get a little bit more detail in the sky. Feel free to follow along from start to finish or fast track through the tutorial using the chapter links below. And as always, if you like the video, please subscribe for more pet photography, shooting and editing tips and tricks. Hi, I'm Craig Turner-Bullock from Unleashed Education, and you've tuned in to another Edit My Photo Winners Edit. We run this free editing challenge in our Unleashed Education community every month. It goes through a few different stages. Firstly, Charlotte and I take turns to submit one of our raw images for members of the challenge to download and edit. For this challenge, I submitted this raw image of Maggie. The winner of the challenge was Rebecca with her edit. Rebecca successfully removed a lot of the distracting elements and left us with a gorgeous edit that really played on the yellow broom flowers and Maggie's blissful expression. Then the challenge turns back around. As the winner of the challenge, Rebecca submitted one of her images for me to edit. I'm keeping it simple in this edit. I'll focus on bringing some detail back into the sky and focusing attention on the dog using those amazing leading lines in the tulips. I'll mostly be using Lightroom for this edit with just a couple of tweaks in Photoshop. Make sure you watch all the way to the end so you can see the final result. And as always, I welcome your questions and feedback in the comments. So here we are in Lightroom, and this is where I'm going to do most of the edits on this image really. I think everything I need to do I can achieve with masks and with the basic adjustments here, except for removing the leash and maybe a couple of the little distractions on the ground. I find when it comes to removing anything that Photoshop does a much better job. You've got much more control over what you're doing with patching, cloning or spot healing, whereas in Lightroom the controls for the spot healing brush are a lot more restrictive. So we'll make a start and I'll use the basic adjustments first of all. If I press J on my keyboard, I can see any areas of clipping, and so we've got these white boxes around the highlights and shadows here. There is no red or blue indicators here showing anything is clipped in the image at all. If we look at the histogram, that backs it up as well, although we can see that there's a lot of shadow detail and a lot of highlight detail as well in both ends, and there's not a lot of mid-tones. So I want to work on maybe evening that out a little bit because we're going to bring some detail back into the sky, and also we're going to lift the shadows from the dog as well. I'm going to use basic adjustments to do that, so I'll bring down highlights. There we go, you can see there's plenty of detail in the sky, some really great clouds and colour there. And we'll lift the shadows too, bring up those. Got some good detail coming into the dog now as well. I'll use the whites and blacks in the opposite direction to add a little bit more contrast back into the image. And I'll add a bit of clarity and a little bit of dehaze as well. Vibrance and a touch of saturation. Not too much though, because these reds are going to get super bright. That's okay there, I think. And then just looking at the dog, yeah, you can see he's a little bit blue. The value on the blues is 36, 37. The reds and greens are hovering around 29, 30. So he's a little bit blue, so let's warm him up. It's a little bit more even there. Now what I'd like to do is just go down to the lens corrections and tick remove chromatic aberration. There's a tiny little bit visible on his tail, but ticking that box has got rid of it really. There's not really any more left there. And now I'll sharpen the image as well. So just taking the amount up. I usually go around 50 on the amount, 1.2 on the radius, and I'll bring the detail up to around about 40 as well. Then I can hold down Option and mask it. And basically I'm sliding this mask up until just the outline edges of the dog are visible. Okay, and now I just want to do a little bit more selective enhancements with masks. So I'll grab the masking tool here. I'm going to do a select sky. I want to just check that because I think that some of this has crept over onto the dog. So I'm going to just go to the dots, change this to white on black. There's a little bit on there. Okay, I will change that back to color overlay. Click on the mask and then I'll subtract select subject. So if we go back to white on black, now you can see the ears are solid. There's no little white bits in the ears or around on the face. Okay, and then I'll just bring the exposure down a little bit, bring the highlights down a little bit, maybe give it a little bit more dehaze and some more clarity. Then I'll make a new mask with select subject, and I'll just bring in some shadow detail here, lift the shadows up a little bit more, possibly even add a bit more warmth back in as well, and a little bit of magenta just to balance out the kind of greeniness. What I'd quite like to do now is balance this path. So you'll see that there's this shadow on the left hand side, and I'd like to just have the similar kind of effect on the right hand side. There's not a really directional light source here. You can kind of see in the catch lights it's quite even, so I think we can get away with making this a little bit darker just to enhance that kind of symmetrical feel. I'll do that with a brush and I'll just paint down that area there and just bring the exposure down. About there's good, I think. We might take it up the back here on the left hand side a little bit more, and I think that's it for that. Then I'll make a new layer mask. I'll select a color range. I want to pick these greens, and then we just need to refine the mask a little bit. I'm just going to make them a little bit warmer and just darken those down a little bit as well. I'm happy with that. I'll take it into Photoshop now and we'll deal with some of these other distractions and get rid of the lead. Okay, so I'll start with a duplicate layer in Photoshop, Command and J, and I'll zoom in nice and close. Grab the patch tool, and so I'm just going to make a selection around this collar and the whole rest of the lead as well. Now I'm going to use content aware fill for this, so I'll hold down Shift and press delete. That brings up your fill box. Make sure content aware is selected and just press OK. And that's gotten rid of it quite nicely. Let's just check the edge here of the dog. Yeah, it's gone a little bit funny here. Let's fix that up. Just clean up these eye boogers while we're here as well. And now I'm just going to look at anything that could be distracting to me, and so these bright areas coming through the tulips here, obviously those are different flowers and it shows the sky behind, but I do think that it's a little distracting and it won't hurt to lose. This bit here is quite distracting. It's not a uniform colour to the rest, and there's a little bit here as well. So now I'll just work on tidying up the ground and removing any distractions from the ground. So this flower that's fallen here is definitely distracting. Maybe get rid of some of these green bits so the ground is nice and uniform brown colours all the way through with no bits of colour here. So I'll just work on that and I'll see you when I'm done. Okay, so now we can see all of the distracting elements are removed. I've left this little bit here. I quite like that there's a little bit in front and around the back here, and you can even see between the legs there going into the distance there's a few petals that have fallen. I just want to clean up his tongue a little bit. I'll do that mostly with a spot healing brush. Next step will be just to bring some more kind of blacks into this fur. I think there's a little bit of kind of greyness here now. I'll duplicate this layer and I'll make a curves adjustment, which is Command and M for your shortcut on curves. Bring that down a bit. Press OK. I'll create a new layer mask. Press Command and I, which will invert the mask. Then with a soft brush I can start bringing back some of the blacks around these greyer areas of the face. So the trick here is to bring back those blacks but not lose the texture in the fur. So if you find it's a little bit too dark, you can always bring back the opacity of the layer just to drop it down a bit more. I think I might just take out these pink bits underneath this dog's nose as well, just because I can. Now if this is a client and this is what the client's dog looks like, I probably wouldn't do this, but for the sake of this edit I think it's absolutely fine. We'll take all of those layers, duplicate them with Command and J, and Command and E will merge them. Now I have a layer with all of the adjustments I've done so far on there. And now really I just want to bring some sharpness to the eyes and make them sparkle a little bit. I'm going to use my glitter eyes action for that. This is available in my sparkle editing course or in the Unleashed Education membership. So for Sparkle Bright, I'm just making sure I have a white brush and I'm painting that onto the coloured parts of the eye and the catch lights as well. And Sparkle Sharp is going over the whole eye. And that's it. Now I'll flatten this and we'll take it back to Lightroom for a few finishing touches. So another mask in Lightroom. I'll grab the radial gradient here, bring it across the dog and down, invert the layer, click on the mask and I'll subtract, select subject, so none of this is applying to the dog. I'll reduce this exposure a bit, then I'll make another new mask with a radial gradient back over the same area, and I'm going to just lighten it slightly. Now I don't want to lighten it too much because we've done that work to bring the blacks back into the dog, but I just want a little bit more lightness coming through it onto the path at the front there. Okay, and then one final radial gradient, which I'll take a little bit bigger across the whole image, invert, and just bring the exposure down a touch more there as well. So here's the before and here's the after. So just using those radial gradients has allowed us to bring a little bit more light here through to the dog. And one final thing, I just want to crop it. Now if I press O on the keyboard with the crop overlay, I can bring up different overlays. I think the composition on this image will be a little bit stronger if we have the dog really centered. So I'm just bringing that in from the side, and I think given that the dog is running straight towards us, the face is pretty symmetrical and the sides are quite symmetrical as well. The middle of the face is the right balance to center here. Just a really small crop and a really little detail, but as I said, it just brings that little extra balance, and it's often those little things that can make the biggest difference to your final work. I think that's it. I'm pretty happy with how that's turned out. I love those leading lines and that symmetry, and I think now we've made a little bit more balance in the exposure. We've brought some drama back into the sky. I'm really happy with the end result.
Hello, it's me again. If you're wondering how you can get involved in these editing challenges and be in with a chance to have one of your images edited by myself or Charlotte, it's easy. You just have to opt into the free Edit My Photo Hub. You'll find the link to join below. This is where the new challenge is set every month, and we announce the winner, post a wrap up, and also share the winner's edit in a tutorial just like this one. We also create a comprehensive editing tutorial, we call them Unleashed Edits, of the raw file that we set for the challenge. This resource is available for purchase individually, but it's also included in our Unleashed Education membership. This is a paid membership with access to our premium pet photography courses, educational videos, ebooks, guest artist videos, editing tutorials, 4 monthly live group coaching calls, and of course our super friendly members only Facebook group. Through the membership, Charlotte and I share all of our best shooting and editing education, everything that you need to become a better pet photographer, plus stacks of inspiration packed up in a fantastic, friendly, worldwide community. But to get you started, we'd love to have you join in on these free Edit My Photo challenges. If you'd like to find out more, check out the link in the description.